what wish would you like to see solved for today?
How do I ensure that even in my 60s, 70s, and maybe even my 80s, like how do I stay active, play sports, and remain fit in general?
Let's go back in time. Let's go back to the 24-year-old version.
So that was a big wake-up call, and that made me prioritize health for the first time in life. I think for the first 6 to 12 months, it was just about reducing your weight. So I went down from 83, 84 to about...
You've got some fantastic metrics going for you.
With respect to my heart health, what are the things which I should be tracking?
You can ask your cardiologist about potentially looking at some of the genetic screening tools. And the easiest one today is the...
I also have a disc issue in my cervical spine. Again, this is because of sitting, typing.
So we did a DEXA scan. You have something called osteophytes, which are these small bony outgrowths.
So what kind of supplements should I be taking?
So my philosophy around supplementation is that today's guest has lived a version of the Indian dream which so many of us aspire to. He grew up in Guwahati, he studied at NIT Surat and IIM Indore, and he's taken a simple business idea which was dominated by legacy companies and has grown it into one of the country's most popular and successful consumer brands. Now, you probably know him from his various avatars. Some of you may have read the book that he's written, the best-selling book, Zero to Scale. Others of you may be a follower of his on LinkedIn and Twitter, seeing the tweets and commentary that he writes about his personal life and his professional life. For me today, I'm sitting down with the Chief Business Officer of Atomberg, one of the country's most successful stories, and we're going to deep dive into what made Arindam the man that he is today and the legacy that he's looking to build over the next years and decades to come. Arindam, welcome to The Long Game. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. All right. So I'm sure you're familiar with the show and what we try to achieve here. So I always like to start by asking our guests a simple question, which is that if I had a lamp if I placed a lamp in front of you and you could rub it and a genie would pop out, and you could make a wish from your health and your longevity perspective, what wish would you like to see solved for today?
I think the wish that I would have at this point today would be, say, when I'm in my 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
I would want to remain physically active as I age, and how do I ensure that even in my 60s, 70s, and maybe even my 80s, like how do I stay active, play sports, and remain fit in general?
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a great frame. So, Arindam, before we think about, let's say, the 72-year-old version of yourself, before I even look at the 36-year-old version, based on all the results and data that I have in front of me, let's go back in time. Let's go back to the 24-year-old version, because I believe that was an inflection moment in your life. Something happened around there. You had an interesting conversation with a doctor, and it set you on a different trajectory than perhaps you would have. So take us back and tell us a little bit about that younger version and what happened.
So you can see 18 to 24 were the college years, right? And just like any 18-year-old, you feel invincible, right? In your like late teens and early 20s.
Yeah.
And you just think you could do anything and get away with it. So, and just like any other college in India, I had a lot of, like, to put it mildly, let's say I enjoyed and had a very good time in those 6 years.
Good.
So
as we all should do.
As we all should, right?
Yeah.
So when I was 24, so growing up, like till about 18, 19, I was actually fairly skinny. So like when I was maybe say 18, I would have been weighing about 55 to 60 kgs.
Yeah.
And in 6 years, that went from 55 to about 83, 84.
Yeah.
So there's like 30 kgs, and it was purely fat gain. And that was the first time when I got myself tested. I think it was just out of like some mandatory requirement in my first job, which was there, wherein you had to get yourself a full body checkup.
Yeah.
And that is when I figured out, like externally, even though I didn't have any symptoms or anything, there were a lot of things which were slowly progressing in a direction which was not right. I had abnormally high lipids at that point. I had very high uric acid. I had a fatty liver. And there were some early issues around back pain, neck pain, which had started coming because I was sitting a lot of time playing games, working, whatever. So, and that was the first time when I realized that if I continue in this trajectory, and I've also have family history of diabetes. So by that point, I was very clear. I knew that both my parents are diabetes.
Yeah.
And so that was the first time I realized that if I continue on this trajectory, things will only get worse from here. And even though the symptoms were not there at that point, but it will not take long before the symptoms start to appear. So that was a big wake-up call, and that made me prioritize health for the first time in life. So I think the moment that happened, right?
Yeah.
So there's a clear decision to focus on health. I think for the first 6 to 12 months, it was just about reducing your weight.
Right.
So I went down from 83, 84 to about 68, 69 in about 12 to 15 months.
Right.
And in that process, what happened was I started enjoying that journey. So I lost weight. All my markers went back to the normal, except my lipids. So now I was like 68, 69 kgs, fairly decent body fat within a year and a half.
Yeah.
But my lipids didn't move.
Yeah.
And that was the first time when the doctor mentioned that maybe your lipids is something hereditary, something which is not linked to your dietary or lifestyle choices. And maybe it's something that you need to solve for through medication.
Right.
And that was in 2015-16. That was way ahead of its time. I think lipids medication was not as common as it is today, especially for when you were in your mid-20s.
Correct.
But the doctor had seen that I had tried everything that I could do naturally.
Yeah.
I lost my weight. I was exercising. I was playing. There was no way you would look at me and say, this guy has high lipids.
Yeah.
And I was already doing everything in my control, and even then the lipids were not in place.
Right.
And that was also, I think, the first time that I had gotten my lipoprotein A, that is my LPA, tested.
Yeah.
And it came out very high. And the doctor also mentioned that it is also a metric that you cannot do something about it. It's a genetic marker.
Yeah.
And that's when he said you need to be on statins.
Yeah.
And 2021 onwards, like I have been on that medication, and like today whatever is there in my control, like controlling the lipids to a very manageable number and all those things are happening today.
Yeah. And I really want to encourage everyone watching the show to appreciate this. So it's getting tested. It's about creating the lifestyle choices. And then it's about having honest conversations with your medical practitioner to appreciate what you need to do to prevent and protect for the long game. So thanks for bringing it up. I think that's just such an important thing for everyone. Okay, let's get into the meat of the show. And the first section we talk about is measured. And measured is all about understanding you beneath the skin, hopefully giving you a better appreciation. I thank you for spending so much time in the labs. You had every test that we could throw at you. We did your heart screening, we did your lungs, we did your abdomen. We had all these various pricks and pokes all over the place. And maybe we can begin by asking, what do you think your biological age is? Do you have any inclination in terms of what that could be? Higher or lower?
It should be slightly lower or similar.
Okay. Remind our audience what your chronological age is.
I'm 36.
You're 36 years old. Okay. Well, looking at you, I'm sure a lot of the audience will probably think that you are younger. And yes, you are. Your biological age is 31 years old. And you've got some fantastic metrics going for you. So let me talk about those first, right? Firstly, cardiovascular health is excellent. You achieved an elite level of fitness on the treadmill stress test that we did. You got to 13.4 METs. That means you're in the top 10% of men your age, which is an incredible feat. Your VO2 max, which is a cardiovascular metric of how fit you are, is at 48. That's a good number. We can certainly get that number up as we go. Currently today, you have exceptional lipids with near zero inflammatory markers as well, which is fantastic. Your metabolic health is pulling ahead. You got solid glucose control. Your body and cells are primed to insulin sensitivity, so that's excellent. And your physical body is very good. Your body fat percentage is low. Your muscle mass is optimal, and your bone mineral density is good as well. So I'm very happy with where you are starting off today. But what we're going to do for everyone watching is we're going to deep dive into those numbers and actually look at the specific areas that we want to focus on, because we spoke about, if I remember your magic wand moment, which is you want to stay this physically healthy and active well into your 70s. So what can we do for you today to get you to that point? And we're going to break it up into 4 sections. Before we do, I think it's important for all of us to get to know you a little bit better so that we can frame these 4 systems properly. So whilst we know that your numbers are genuinely strong, I think it's really interesting for us to take a step back and appreciate who you are as a business sort of entrepreneur professional. I mean, you're probably working, 50, 60-hour weeks. You're traveling a lot. I see that online as well. How do you balance, or probably balance is the wrong word, how do you harmonize your life so that you're spending time doing all of these things? What's sort of the model that you have, especially when it comes to exercise? What do you build into the day-to-days?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to exercise, I think very quickly I realized was, even for exercise, there's a point of diminishing returns. And because when I started off exercising, that was in 2014, 15, 16, and there were times when I was working out 6 days a week. And very quickly I realized it is not sustainable. So there are times when I would maybe be working out only twice a week, but I'll be maybe spending 2 hours session in each of those days.
Yeah.
And those things come very handy when I'm traveling during the week. And so that's about 4 hours a week of workout. Work plus travel combined, on an average, it takes about 55 to 60 hours a week. I also try and sleep for about 7 hours every night. So I think that takes up maybe another, say, 50 odd hours.
Yeah.
And then you still get left with 30, 40 hours for whatever you want to do, right?
Yeah.
Spend time with family, play with my kids, go out once in a while. And so, yeah, broadly, I think that's been the routine.
Yeah.
On weeks where I need to travel for work, it slightly changes.
Yeah.
I think when I travel for work, I think 2 things are genuinely difficult, which I also struggle with, and I don't have a solution for it. One is what I eat. So, because typically I would say when I go for travel, right? So we have an offline distribution setup.
Yeah.
So for me, travel doesn't mean sitting in one place or one office. So it would mean going to the market, visiting 12 different shops which sells fans.
Yeah.
And every shop that you go would offer you either a tea or a coffee or a lassi or something like that.
Right.
And you cannot say no to it.
Yeah.
So it's out of courtesy.
Yeah.
So on days that I go to the market, I end up having 8 to 10 cups of tea.
Right.
And all are with sugar. You can't say without sugar, and all those things again are like not possible.
Yeah.
So you end up doing it. So there is, I haven't figured out a solution to that. So maybe at times what I do is I skip one of the meals.
Right.
Either I would not do lunch, but again, lunch is also very important because that's when you bond with the team.
Yeah.
So maybe sometimes I skip dinner, sometimes I skip breakfast, just to maintain my overall calories of about. So in my mental model, I have that I need a calorie somewhere between 2200 to 2500.
Right.
Weekends are a lot more disciplined that way.
Yeah.
So I think that's the fine balance which I try to maintain.
So when I was reading through the book and when I was reading through some of your posts online, I look at you and I think a lot of people share this. This is an individual who makes the right decisions more often than not, right? There's a cognitive superpower about you, right? Compliment intended. You live in a world, or you have an environment around you which is highly stressful. Everyone who's ever built a company knows this. Every entrepreneur watching this knows this. How do you set yourself up for repetitively making the right decisions more often than not? And how do you manage the amount of distress, bad stress around you so that you allow yourself to make those right decisions more often than not?
See, I think it's about focus on the things which you control.
Okay.
I think, again, we're talking about our health, right?
Yeah.
So there are things which are out of my control. For example, I have very high cardiovascular risk because of my genetic propensity.
Yeah.
Now, if I stress about it, that's not going to change the outcome anyways.
Yeah.
But again, there are 10 things which are in my control. My weight is in my control. My, like, whether I smoke or drink, that is in my control. I think that the same goes in business as well, right? So there are, while you cannot control the output, there are 10 different inputs which goes to building that output.
Yeah.
And you can control those inputs.
Okay. Do you have any non-negotiables? Things that you would never want to? I'm getting a sense that food is an area of some degree of non-negotiables, but are there any other things that you know and maybe not so good for you, but you just love to do them? And they may not be bad things. They could be good things as well.
Of course. Yeah. I think, for example, that 4 hours of workout is also non-negotiable.
Right.
So there are weeks when maybe I would be better off not working out.
Yeah.
Where the body would be calling for rest.
Right.
I would be carrying a light viral or something like that. But for my mental health, it becomes very important that I do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that actually harms the physical health.
Yeah.
So,
and we've seen that. Actually, when I've looked at your Whoop data, it's there. We'll talk about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the same thing, right? For example, there are some exercises which maybe I should not be doing because of my cervical issues or my lumbar spine issues. But some days again, you feel like those are very important for your mental health. So I think that's also like some kind of non-negotiable for me.
Okay, good. That was the end of our measured section. We're now going to go to the next section of our show, which is the understand section, which is where we're going to look at 4 specific systems in your body. We're going to look at your cardiovascular system, the heart. We're going to look at your muscles, your bones, and then finally your brain. You know, for you to be physically active and cognitively capable in your 70s, I think these are 4 solid systems for us to invest in and focus on today. So let's look at the first system, which is your cardiovascular one. So we spoke a lot about your numbers earlier on. You've got excellent aerobic capacity, a solid VO2 max, your treadmill stress test was really good. Your triglycerides, your lipids are all very well controlled now with the lifestyle and medications that you're on. You're making the right choices. So the modifiable risk factors are all under control, which are excellent. And we did a structural scan of the heart on the 2D echo. Your valves are good. The heart function is good. The pump action is good. So I'm really, really happy with your cardiovascular function. So as a system, that is probably your top system today. Do you have any thoughts, questions that I could maybe answer around that?
So I think there'll be a couple of things. So one is, because I've had lipids for a very long time, right? High lipids from say 2013, 14 to about 2020.
Yeah.
There's a chance it could have led to some kind of calcification. And also because the other thing is, I've also taken statins for a long time. And what I've also discussed was statins also sometimes help you calcify the plaque. So one is that. So I think what would be a possible, so for someone of my thing, what kind of calcium score would be something which would be okay, acceptable, and what would be something which will then lead you to investigate other things? I think that is number one. Number two would be, with respect to my heart health, what are the things which I should be tracking, and at what frequency?
Okay, so let's talk about the relationship between a calcium score and taking a statin. I think that's a really, really smart, intelligent question, because all the viewers, we've all hopefully appreciated by now that there's soft plaque and there's hard plaque. Hard plaque is calcium, soft plaque is cholesterol. The coronary calcium test that we do, which is a radiographic image of the vessels of the heart, it picks up on calcium. And that means there's hard plaque that's building up in the walls. It does not pick up any of the soft plaque, which is where an angiogram is potentially required. Now, the big learning in this for everyone watching this is that if you're taking a statin, this act of the statin, the way it works, which is a HMG-CoA reductase, actually works by stabilizing some of that plaque that is building up in your arteries. And paradoxically, a person on a statin over a period of time may find that their calcium score goes up. Now, one would think, okay, that's a bad sign. But actually, in this instance, it's a good indicator because it means that the soft plaque, which is unstable or less stable than hard, is stabilizing itself. And that's being more protective for you in the long run. So that's a good learning point for all of us. The second is, what tests should we be doing? So the typical battery of tests that I like to see with folks who are going through the long game, or just generally people who are taking a more preventative approach to life, is number one, definitely get your bloods tested routinely. And that should be done at least once a year, especially when we're looking at our lipid panel and our inflammatory panel and our cardiac risk factors as well. And there's a whole battery of tests which are available from the labs. That's one, bloods. Secondly, if you find that your lipids are accelerating or at a higher than age, at a higher level at a young age, you can ask your cardiologist about potentially looking at some of the genetic screening tools. And the easiest one today is the Lp(a) value, which is a blood-based test. The next is we look at the electricity of the heart. So this is where we do a treadmill stress test. We look at signs of ischemia. We may do a resting ECG. If there are any abnormal beats or rhythms, you may do a Holter monitor, which is like a 3-day version of it, looking at the electrical conduction through the heart as well. We then look at the imaging of the heart. So the 2D echo is the gold standard. That looks at the valves. It looks at the pumping action. It looks at the ventricle walls. It looks for any defects in terms of holes as well. So this is typically sort of the battery of tests available when it comes to assessing risk. That's a sensible approach to cardiovascular screening over
So basically what you're saying is all the imaging tests to be done every 5 years.
Every 3 to 5 years, depending upon how
and the blood tests every year.
Every year, absolutely. Good. All right. Well, hopefully that was very helpful for everyone watching at home. So I'm very happy with the state of your cardiovascular system. The next system that I want to talk about is your muscles. So everyone watching this is seeing a man wearing a tight black t-shirt, muscle, triceps and biceps, clearly shows that you're working out often. What I really liked hearing from you earlier on when you were describing your movement pattern, you said you do 1 day a week minimum of upper body, second day a week was lower body, and if you get a third day, you do a lower body as well. This is a great learning opportunity because people, aesthetically, we all want the upper body to look great, which is fantastic. But the lower body has got such a large amount of muscle mass that we forget that we need to invest in building our quads, our hamstrings, our glutes, our lower back, our core. Very, very critical. So,
and I've learned it the hard way.
Exactly. Tell us about that learning.
So when you start going to the gym, most of the focus in the first 1-2 years, and that's how Indian trainers are also there, right? So most of the focus is on your chest, back, biceps, triceps, shoulder, all of those things, and legs used to be at max once a day when you're working out, once a week when you're working out 5-6 times a week. So, and when I started having lower back pain, that was sometime in my mid to late 20s, I did an MRI and found out there was something in the lumbar spine. I think that's absolutely fine. Most people, if you would get an MRI, you would find some incidental findings in your L5S1. And that's when my physio told me, if you really want to live a pain-free life, you need to work on your legs. You need to work on your glutes, which are very large muscles. You need to work on your hamstrings, quads, which are again very, very large muscles. And that's when the focus on lower body started. And that has actually solved a lot of my lower back pain. And my lower back pain has not been solved by doing more flexibility exercise or like the physio exercise as such. It just got solved by training your legs more and getting your legs and glutes stronger and getting your core stronger. So again, learned it the hard way.
Amazing. You had the doctor at 24 who made the right decision. You had the physio later on in life who's given you great advice. You've been serendipitously surrounded by these right inputs. Okay, we're gonna, and I was just looking through the data that you have because you wear the band, the Whoop band, which tracks all your sessions. I can see in the last 16 months, you did 356 strength training sessions, which is a really strong number, with an average score of 6, which shows there's consistency and there's a increasing load of resistance. Very good. I wanted to do something as a live experiment. So in front of us here, we've got a muscle dynamometer, which measures the grip strength. And we're going to ask Arindam to do this live on air. He's not done this before. He's sort of just been prepped now. And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to stand up. Grip it in your right hand. You're right-handed. Grip it in your right hand and squeeze as hard as you can for 10 seconds. And then let's see what the score is. And then depending on the score, we'll interpret that for you and the audience and see where we go. So why don't we do that now? So we'll switch it on.
To start, right?
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead. Yeah. So I want you to squeeze it as tight as you can. Yep. Go. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Great, 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 great. And stop. What's that number?
56 points.
Did the camera get that number? My goodness, that's a high score. All right. Fantastic. Good. All right. So, typically we would do this 3 times to look at the best of 3. I'm sure the next time will be higher and then higher still. So what does this mean for you? So a 40-year-old male should have a number between 39 to 55. Okay. And that's the average number globally. We don't have any data on Indians, but one would imagine, given our smaller frames, that number is probably lesser. And you've clearly outdone that. So you've got, your heart system is already in the top 10%. Your musculature is very, very high. And people are probably asking, what has my hand grip strength got to do with my longevity? There's some very interesting data which have been published the world over where the hand grip strength has now been indicated to be one of the biomarkers that you can track over a period of time, which gives you a predictive value of whether you're going to live into your old age or not. And that's not because of the strength of your hand per se. That's because of what it represents. The hand muscles itself represents forearms, which generates force from the upper body, which means that there's an overall level of fitness and muscle mass, which is providing that contractility force into your hands, allowing for that squeeze. And looking at some of the data, we found that for every 5 kilogram drop in strength number, there is an associated rise in cardiovascular disease of up to 17%. So it's a sensitive measure. It's a non-specific measure, but it's a sensitive measure. And it's a good one to do. So I like to do it on everyone who comes into the clinic just to keep an eye on the check. So muscle-wise, you're doing very good. I can also tell you, Arindam, that your testosterone values are strong. Your thyroid function is very good. So your hormonal synthesis for muscles is great. And in fact, it's allowing you to gain and maintain muscle. And your micronutrients, which are important for building muscle, which is your vitamin D3, your vitamin B12, and your iron, are all sitting in the excellent range. So good job on your muscle system. So the learning for all of us at home is that the earlier you start to make an investment in your muscle, the better. Arindam had the great advice from a physiotherapist to tell him to not just focus on upper body, but focus on the lower body as well. And he's done that, and it's showing great evidence as well. Okay, we'll move on to our third system, which is the bones. So tell me a little bit about sort of the journey of bone health. Is that something you've tested for before? Have you measured your bone mineral density? Have you been conscious of it at all?
This was the first time where we got that measured.
Yeah.
But I've had spinal health issues.
Okay.
So which again, maybe somehow linked to this. So I think broadly 2 issues. So I think what I mentioned previously as well, in my mid-20s, I think first time I had episodes of lower back pain, wrong posture, sitting for long hours, and weak core, weak glutes. I think all those were the causes of that.
Yeah.
And I think when I got my MRI done in my late 20s, I found there's a clear herniated disc in my L5S1.
Yeah.
And I also have a disc issue in my cervical spine. Again, this is because of sitting, typing while traveling, and a lot of wrong postural issues. So I think while I've been able to fairly control my lumbar spine issues through strength training of the legs, core and all, I think when it comes to cervical spine, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
And there are some positions which trigger it, some postures which trigger it, and that is still something that I'm trying to figure out. Again, while that is not directly related to bones, but again related to the spinal health.
Yeah. So we did a DEXA scan, which is where we look at the mineral deposition and the quality of your bone, which I again recommend that everyone does at least once every 3 years at a minimum. As we get older, especially as we get into our 4th decade, and especially women watching the show, it's becomes important almost to do that on an annual basis, because for women, they actually lose bone quality much faster than we do. Testosterone protects us to some degree. But your DEXA scan was excellent, right? I can see here that your bone age actually shows you to be close to 5 years younger than your chronological age. Your bone mineral density, we look at 3 specific positions. We look at the bone quality in your upper arms, so the ulnar and the radius. We look at the bone quality in your lumbar spine, the lower spine, and we look at the bone quality in your hip bones, your femoral neck as well. And for all of those sites, there was a great signal. So there's no low density findings at all, no fracture risks, and it shows me that you have healthy cortical bone, which is excellent. Also, your micronutrients for bone health, which is vitamin D3 and calcium, and the markers of bone turnover, there's a couple of blood tests that you can do to look at that, are all excellent as well. So bone quality is very good. I was looking through some of the images of the spinal MRIs that you did, and you're absolutely right. You have something called osteophytes, which are these small bony outgrowths, especially on the cervical vertebra going up into your neck. And that's probably a sign of poor posture. Most of us spend a lot of our days like this with our phones, whether it's in the flight, whether it's at our desk, etc. So ergonomics and posture for you are going to be very, very critical things. But I can see you're beginning to create some of that, because even in this conversation today, I've noticed that your posture has been better. So are you conscious about that? Are you sort of working on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And what are maybe 2 or 3 things that you're doing to try and optimize
So one
for
is
that?
in my office, I also have a standing desk now.
Okay, great.
Second is try to maintain the laptop. I try and maintain my laptop in my line of sight with my eye.
Yeah.
I think those things I've been able to do.
All right. So, as I look through your bone health, I'm very happy with the solid foundations that you have. I think given that you're in your 3rd decade, to start to see cervical strain clearly puts you at element of risk which needs to be managed going forward. The good news is that you're conscious about it. You're beginning to make those ergonomic and postural changes today. And when we get to our last section, which is around improve, we'll talk a little bit about maybe some of the ways in addition to what you're already doing. For the audience at home, I just want to remind all of you for the learning moment and the key takeaway from this section of bone health, which is that when we go to the gym, we are applying a strain which is not just helping our muscles to grow, but that same strain is applying a force on our bones as well. And that's the single best thing that you can each do to improve your bone health as well. Okay, the last section, the last foundational pillar, which I think is important for all of us as we think about our 7th and 8th decade, is our brain health as well. A lot of us get very focused on the physical frame, but for you, especially given, the cognitive superpower that you have, I wanted to ensure that we have a conversation around your brain health as well. The data we have, firstly, is around your recovery and your sleep. So I can see here that you do prioritize sleep. You have an average of 6.5 hours every night. It's solid, especially in the key phases of deep sleep and REM sleep. So that's an important metric that I'm glad to see. I looked at your long-term data trend line, and over the last 6 to 12 months, those numbers are slowly, steadily increasing. So clearly, you're making the right investments, but you are still in what we call a sleep debt. And I'm taking this back to a statement you made earlier on, which is you said that sometimes you know that you're physically tired, but you still go to the gym. And I appreciate why you're doing so. But as we continue to do that over a period of time, that sleep debt will just increase and increase and increase. So I think we need to start being a little bit more conscious about that sleep component, getting the right amount of sleep, and not applying strain or excessive strain on the days when we are not well rested. And my favorite metric for this, Arindam, is the HRV, the heart rate variability. And these modern devices now do an automated calculation for you. It'll show you if you're in debt or what your strain score is and how much you should push yourself. But I encourage all of us to be thinking about, what's our HRV today? How can I use that to unlock or push myself and my body and use it as a guide and a measurement? And we also did a blood test on you. We did your cortisol test as well. And we can see that you have this daily spike, which is normal. The spike on the day we tested was slightly higher than what it should be. And what we like to see is that cortisol level then decline and come back to normal as we go through the day as well. Some of the blood values for you related to your brain health were thyroid function, excellent. HDL, which is a protective form of cholesterol, very, very active in brain cells. Our brain actually produces the highest amount of cholesterol in the body, and those levels were excellent. Your vitamin B3, your vitamin B12, and your folate levels are all excellent. So You had a question about supplementation.
Yes.
I'm just remembering that now. Yeah.
Yes.
What was that? Maybe it connects to here.
So what kind of supplements should I be taking?
So my philosophy around supplementation is that it must always be data driven. So I'm very comfortable sharing with you what you should take because I have the data in front of me. So for you, specifically to protect your brain and your heart, the single most advantageous supplement you should be on is an omega-3 capsule. Right? 1.5 to 2 grams, so 1500 to 2000 milligrams per day. So that's one definitely that I would like to see you take lifelong. The second is a molecule called creatine. Creatine has benefits as a fuel for the cardiovascular system. It has a benefit for the muscle because it's a type of building block that the muscle requires for performance and for growth as well. And increasingly, we are seeing early signs of evidence and data to protect for brain health as well. When it comes to your other micronutrients, your vitamin D3 levels were good.
But on this creatine bit, I have one question. So
of course.
Historically, sometimes I have had high uric acid.
Yes.
And that's why I have always been resistant about, again, I don't have high uric acid as of now, but sometimes like in the 10 years back, I had that.
Yes.
And somehow you get that trend because uric acid is related to kidney health.
Yeah.
And creatinine also, like that marker is there for kidney health as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you take creatine, on your blood reports also, the creatinine levels also go up.
Absolutely.
And in Indian blood tests, we have seen that your GFR is also calculated basis your creatine.
Yeah.
So when your creatine shows high, it shows that you have low GFR.
Yes.
So those things actually create a lot of anxiety in people, and that's why I have never taken creatine in my life.
So let's dispel the fallacy. There are two myths that we can break on this show today. The single biggest reason why uric acid rises, especially in the Indian context, is the overconsumption of simple sugars like fructose, right? In the West, people talk about high proteins and nucleic acid material, but for most of us here, because of how much fructose, which is a form of sugar we consume, especially in processed foods, that's the single biggest reason why uric acid rises. And I can tell you yours are absolutely normal. Historically, they were higher, they've come down. Right? So that's important for our audience to appreciate, which is the relationship between sugar and uric acid rises. The second is creatine and kidney function. The molecule creatine gets converted into our body into creatinine. There's a phosphate group that's get added to it and it gets converted into creatinine. And that creatinine will therefore naturally raise your blood creatinine levels, which is why when we do the kidney function test, that number will be higher. And Arindam, you're exactly right. The EGFR, which is a measure of filtration of the kidney, is calculated based on that creatinine value. Right. So if you're taking creatine, your creatinine value will go up. Your filtration number will therefore come down as an inverse relationship. And people will be anxious saying that this has affected my kidney function. That is only the half truths. The most sensitive measurement for kidney function is doing a blood test called cystatin C, cystatin-C. That is not affected by taking creatine, and it's the most sensitive measure of kidney function. The other is to do a urinary albumin-creatinine ratio test, which is the earliest sign, and that's a urine test that you can do. So anyone who's concerned about kidney function should firstly be looking at either the UACR or the cystatin C. And secondly, for anyone who's taking creatine, they should be aware that it's perfectly natural for your creatinine levels to rise, and it does not mean that your renal function is in any disrepair. And then your micronutrients are very well managed, but I would continue putting you on a maintenance dose for vitamin D3.
I do take that.
Exactly.
So vitamin D3, I think every 4 to 5 months, I take that 8 weeks dose of the 60,000 IU per week.
So keeping your numbers close to 60 is a healthy number. People taking D3 can also take K2 because it helps direct the calcium and the D3 in places it should be. The other one that will help keep maintenance is a vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex will maintain your B12, your B6, your B9s. And this is very helpful, especially in people who have high homocysteine values. And it helps, maintain the conversion and keep those levels in check. So these are some of the ones that I would probably suggest in you. And as I said, for everyone watching this, that please do not be just guided by this conversation. Have your blood test, speak to your clinical practitioner, and then decide what supplements you should be taking as well. Okay, great. So Arindam, we're in the final section of this show. This is called Improved. So first section we did measured. Second, we understood the measurements, and now we're going to look at the improvements. And frankly, this is my favorite section because this is where we actually get to play the long game. And, to remind everyone, you set the challenge, which was you want to be physically active in your 70s. So we looked at the 4 systems, and we're going to now look at 3 things that you can do. And the way I divide this is there are things you must do. So these are the non-negotiables, which I think will help you improve. The next one is stuff that is good to do. And then the last one is the stuff the elites are doing that you can incorporate into your life as well. So as we go through, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me as we go. So let's do the first one, which is what must you do? And what I'm going to focus on the must do is directly related to your spine health. So cervical spine and lumbar spine. So we can see from the imaging that you have damage, which is not the disc itself, but it's actually all of the tightness and structures around the disc, the collagen, the tissues, the tendons, etc. And in the earlier section, you told me a little bit about posture, about the ergonomics and sort of the flexibility. I think for you, what you can consider adding as a must-do action is building in more active recovery, right, into the week by week. So sleep is one, and you have excellent sleep scores, but there's debt which is creeping in. So how do you improve that? And the other aspect could be 2 or 3 modalities from an active recovery. So what I mean by that is massage. Trigger point release massage can be very effective. The physiotherapists and the technicians can work with you on that. The second is that there are newer interventions available which use the energy of light, photomodulation, red light and blue light spectra, which actually emit energy, which can bring down local inflammation, which will help from that perspective, and potentially assist and augment collagen synthesis, tendon repair, etc. And the third is heat. So the application of heat locally or in a sauna or steam, these can all be relaxing and soothing and will help loosen up the tight tendons and musculature so that you can then do that flexibility. Would you be able to build that into the day-to-day? Have you tried any of these things already?
Some of it, yes.
Okay.
I think trigger point releases heat on and off.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, need to build it more actively.
Yeah.
So today it is like very reactive.
Yeah.
When it gets very tight, that's when you start thinking about it.
Yeah.
Maybe ideally it should be part of the routine itself.
Absolutely. I think once weekly or fortnightly as a massage can be easy to fit in. If you work out with a gym which has access to a sauna or a heat room, or even the simple application of a heat pad end of day can be very powerful, top end and bottom end as well. So for you, the must do is active recovery and application of heat, maybe some photomodulation and some massage-based techniques as well. Okay. Second is good to do. What are the things that would be good to do? And for you, I'm focusing primarily on your nutrition here. You're already very disciplined, but you began to speak about some of the challenges you have in the day-to-day. So I'm going to look at some food items that you can potentially add to your day-to-day, which might benefit your health, right? So the first is around carbohydrates. So you have a low carb tolerance. So that means that whilst your sugars are well controlled, given your modifiable and non-modifiable risks, the amount of carbohydrate that you should be consuming should be on the low side, right? Which you probably know as well. So one effective technique is what we call time-restricted eating, which you're doing already, or people might call that intermittent fasting as well. Adding lots of fiber. So maybe on days where you're going shop to shop, having those sort of cutting chais and teas, maybe having a high fiber, high protein meal immediately before will help manage those glucose levels throughout the rest of those days, rest of that time, so that you don't have these repeated spikes. And then there are some foods that you could consider. So dark leafy green vegetables, eggs, legumes, these are all high in methylfolate, methylcobalamin, B12 levels. And so that'll help keep your B levels up as well. Alcohol restriction is important, especially on travel days. And fatty fish, you're Bengali, so I'm sure you enjoy fish. So fatty fish is great as a natural omega-3 supplementation. Olive oil as a oil or avocado oil to add on salads. Certain types of nuts like walnuts, very healthy in sort of good cholesterols and good fats. And then restricting fructose, especially with that history of the high uric acid. So no processed foods, or avoiding processed foods as far as possible. And choosing fruits which are lower in fructose compared to others and high fibers. So that could be fruits like apples and pears, oranges and citrus and berries, and avoiding the high fructose fruits like mangoes, pineapples, watermelons, all of those sweet foods as well. So that's on the carbs. We did some maths on your protein consumption. Given your body fat percentage, given your muscle mass, given your long-term goals, and given that you did 869 sessions over 16 months with 356 of those being weightlifting, we believe that having a protein to weight ratio of 1.6 to 2 grams per kilogram is really important. So that'll equate to about 120 to 140 grams of protein every day. Would that be manageable given sort of your dietary
something
choices?
100 gram would be a lot more easier.
Yeah. So maybe you look at sort of each meal and consider what's that extra bit of protein that you could potentially add. Is there a protein snack that you could take on the go? But having that protein would be important. So those are your must-dos. So the must-dos are around nutrition, where we limit carbs. We add certain foods which will be a micronutrient top-up. We add foods which are good in cholesterols because of your heart health and your brain health. And we increase the protein as well. So we maintain that muscle for as long as possible.
So I have one query on this, and I also have a very big sweet tooth.
Okay.
And especially in dinner, suppose dinner is something that I invariably go looking for something sweet to have. And I've tried deleting these food delivery apps multiple times,
right?
But invariably they come back to my phone, and then post dinner is when maybe 3-4 times a week I'll end up ordering ice cream or a pastry or a cake or something like that.
Yeah.
So I cannot completely stop it, I think, because that's again, I've tried doing it, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So what's a good portion size or number of times that you can have without increasing the risks significantly?
So considering you're doing it already and your numbers are good, clearly the other aspects of your life are offsetting some of those. The high muscle mass, the exercise, the improved sleep, fiber, protein, all of those are helping. The first message is, if you're going to enjoy, don't be guilty about that enjoyment, right? Enjoy it because, otherwise what's the point of that? So once or twice a week, I see absolutely no harm in doing so. I would encourage you to maybe try a few things that I've personally found that have worked for me, because like you, I also have a sweet tooth. I find that if I brush my teeth after a meal, that satiates some of that sweet craving response. It changes sort of the feel of the mouth, and you gravitate towards sweet much less. So maybe try that and see if it works. The second, I found that having some good quality dark chocolate in the fridge, not as dark as 90%, that's quite bitter, but something which is still sweet enough, maybe 60 to 70%. A few pieces of that often, again, satiates that sweet craving, and you have that sweetness in the mouth. And so maybe try these two things and see if they work for you as well. I've personally found that these can be effective. Yeah. Okay, the last thing I want to tell you about is what the elites do. And especially given your heart health. I mean, you've already got such excellent numbers. Your VO2 max is currently at 48, which puts you in the top 10% for men. I believe that number can go higher, especially because you want to play the long game. And there's something called the Norwegian protocol. Are you familiar with this terminology? No. Okay, so this was developed by the Norwegian Olympic team, and the whole idea was, what is the most effective interventional strategy that an athlete can employ to his or her life to help enhance their cardiovascular endurance in as short a time as possible. And this has now been called the Norwegian protocol. It sits as follows. It's a 4x4 mechanism. So what you need to do is, for 4 minutes, you need to elevate your heart rate to as maximum as possible. So for your age, we calculated that to be a work interval between 165 to 175 beats per minute. your max heart rate should be 184. So 90% of that is 165 to 175. So for 4 minutes, we want you to be exercising in that zone. So that might be a sprint on the treadmill. It might be the assault bike. It might be you running outdoors, but that's a 4-minute block. Immediately after that 4-minute block, you have a 4-minute block of recovery. This is not where you stop. This is where you then allow your heart rate to drop to about 120, 130. So more conversational zone 2 pace. And so you might be, slowing down the speed. You do this for 4 minutes. So that entire block of 4 plus 4 is then repeated 4 times. So 8 minutes times 4 is 32 minutes. You can finish this off in half an hour. But sustaining your heart rate at maximal for 4 minutes, allowing it to recover for 4 minutes, and then repeating it as a cycle is one of the most effective ways that you can enhance your VO2 max over a period of time. And at a bare minimum, you should do this once a week. If you wanted to strive towards more aggressive goals, you could maybe increase that to 2 times a week. But it's a hard workout. You feel, pretty exhausted by the end of it. But it's one of the most powerful ways that we've seen that we can increase your VO2 max. And for me, that would be what your elite level Arindam should be doing. I think it's perfectly achievable for you to target a VO2 max of 55 in the next 12 to 18 months if you employ this. Well, how does that sound to you?
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, maybe your next tweet or LinkedIn post could be, a VO2 max 4x4. All right. So that was the improve section. So something you must do, something that's good to do, and something that the elites should be doing as well. Before I close, there's something that just occurred to me as we were thinking through this conversation. And this is more from me as a clinician asking you a piece of advice. How does one make longevity, preventative health exciting for everyone? And I ask you this question because you got into building fans, and people watching this would probably think, well, fans is not the most exciting industry to get into, but somehow you made that interesting, exciting, and big. What advice do you have for all of us, health entrepreneurs or building in the health space? What can we do to make longevity and preventative health exciting?
Yeah. No, I think what's important is most people confuse longevity. I don't think it's about the number of years, it's about the quality of years.
Right.
And I think if that message is very clear to people, I think, of course, you want to be active in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. Most people would want to do that.
Yeah.
If you ask people, do you want to live up to 150? I think you might not get a very clear answer, and especially if you are aging, right? You don't want to live for 50, 60 years with the body of an old person where your capabilities are very limited.
Yeah.
But I think that need of maintaining your independence, maintaining your freedom well into your 60s, 70s, and 80s, I think that is a universal need.
Yeah, fantastic. Arindam, you've been so gracious with your time. You've spent so much time with us, and I've learned so much, and I'm sure the audience sitting and watching at home has also learned so much about this as well. You've been on this incredible journey of building. You had the right interventions and advice at the right points in time. The 24-year-old version that changed the trajectory later on in life through conversations about mobility and strength training as well. And now hopefully in your 36th year, we have another intervention for you, which will lay the foundation for the next 36 years and beyond. So thank you very much for playing the long game with me today.
Thank you for having me here. And I've also learned a lot about my body, which I think is going to be very beneficial in the next few decades.
Thank you very much. Before you leave, let me summarize the episode that we've just seen together. So, learning tip number 1 is I'd like you all to measure your lipids early. In this episode, it was a prime example of how early testing and intervention can make a massive difference to the trajectory of your cardiovascular and heart health. Learning tip number 2 is make sure you invest in growing your muscles today. Not just focus on your upper body, but concentrating on your lower body as well. Your muscles are your biggest metabolic asset when it comes to your longevity. Learning tip number 3 is that strength training is important, not just in building muscles in the gym, but also in improving the bone quality and mineral density as well. Get a DEXA scan to quantify the quality of your bone, and then spend time investing in building your bone health. Learning tip number 4 is that your brain soaks up micronutrients and cholesterols. It thrives on it. So when you eat, when you fuel the body, remember that you also need to eat to fuel from your neck up, i.e. healthy brain health as well. And action and learning tip number 5 is that the Norwegian protocol is one of the single best interventions that you can do to enhance your VO2 max, your cardiorespiratory endurance. Thank you so much for investing your time with me today on The Long Game.